how should agencies both respond to this and then organize themselves to survive this? And I thought maybe we could start there with thoughts you might have on that.
Yeah, a few friends have reached out, not to me directly, but sort of in fora and that sort of thing. And I've read some blog posts from a few friends, and I think from a defensibility position, it's something I've advised for a long time, to diversify the service offerings that you've got, particularly as they relate to advertising, right? So we've seen Google and Facebook eating up more and more of the really the agency skill set, with a lot of their offerings like local service ads and boosted posts and all these things that small businesses can really do on their own, just as effectively without an agency sort of middleman. And if you're an agency right now and you hadn't diversified out of ads into things like organic search and Google My Business and email marketing and setting up a CRM and those kinds of things, I'm definitely seeing and hearing from a lot of folks that people are just hitting the pause button on all of their ads right now because nobody's really buying anything and it's a really uncertain time. So I do think that agencies, from a like business model standpoint, it's increasingly hard to be focused on just selling advertising or just reselling advertising, essentially. And I think that speaks to the need to to diversify into more of these elements of the stack, as you and Neil and so many other folks at Localogy have been saying. So
yeah, and I've had a few other conversations this week where folks are talking about how this is sort of forcing them into diversification.
Yep.
And it's a hell of a time to be forced into that. It's better to be there already, right? But I was talking to somebody earlier, this is not in the US, but similar type. It was like the location advertising, location-based advertising company.
Right.
And, their quick pivot was into basically sponsoring content for brands.
Yep.
They sort of just kind of made that up as they went along, but it was like,
Yep.
I have to figure out something else quickly that's going to get some revenue stream from brands right now.
Yep.
And, I think these things can be a wake-up call.
For sure. And one of the things, so that's a little farther afield from what at least when I think of an SMB, what they would sort of spend money on.
Yeah, this one was like more of a multi-location brand.
Right.
Anyway,
okay.
So those are the relationships he had. So.
Yep. Yeah. So, I would definitely, and what I've encouraged is now is a really good time to sort of, double down on your analytics offerings, because that doesn't even require necessarily current traffic or current conversions. You can, take a deep dive into historical data, do a better job of identifying, the kinds of content and the kinds of visuals and your best referral sources and all of these things that you can use to, put together a strategy for when we do start to, come out of this dip. So I think that analytics, regardless of the widget type of marketing that you're selling or of MarTech that you're selling, I do think analytics right now is a good thing to be working on, provided that your client, provided that you can get buy-in from your clients on that. So. Right.
Which is kind of, so I guess it's sort of almost that the change you have to make to respond to this or the change you have to make anyway, right?
I think so. I guess I'm, I think that the pain is going to be significant and already is significant in the short term.
Right.
But I think that the bigger sort of takeaway from this is that it is going to shift, I think, consumer behavior and business behavior, sort of 20 or 30 degrees permanently. I think that all of us are getting more and more used to, virtual meetings. That's going to have an impact on commercial real estate and office space and that sort of thing. I think we're all now becoming much more accustomed to e-commerce as a channel. And if you're a small business, I think, having some sort of e-commerce, you don't necessarily have to upload your entire product catalog to your website and offer online checkout for everything, but some kind of order ahead, pick up in store, those kinds of things. I think people are going to expect those now, having experienced that for the last, certainly for the last 6 weeks and probably for another 6 weeks at least. So,
you You mentioned something that I have a few theories about going into this. One is that, yeah, you just mentioned commercial real estate. I don't think downtowns are going to be emptied out permanently necessarily, but I think they're going to be I think these big commercial office space projects there's going to be less and less demand for them in the future, because I do think there's going to be a more distributed work environment on a more permanent basis, and that has big impact on commercial real estate, as you mentioned. I also think this death by 1,000 cuts of retail that's been happening for, I don't know what point where you put the pin and when that began, but I think that accelerates dramatically, just because I think so many retailers simply won't have the resources to come back and open these stores again. So that shift that was happening anyway, the malls are going to be cratered out, I think, and some will come back, some won't, but I think, again, it's more not changing trends, but accelerating them, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to say it. I think that, a lot of the things that we've seen for the last, even probably 6 or 8 years, I think that this is going to really, dramatically accelerate what's happening. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned something earlier, which is, the sort of the Facebook, Google ad platforms kind of reducing the need for at least agencies as they were configured previously, and the need to sort of diversify. Let's dig into that a little more, because that's kind of core to what we really want to be talking about here.
Sure.
What does an agency need to evolve into over the next 5 years?
Yeah. So I think it's the same thing. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I've been saying a similar thing for the last 3 or 4. So again, kind of continuing on the trend of accelerating rather than shifting. I think that the real key value to agencies is identifying the specific product set and connecting those specific products that fit a unique business, right? So, if you're a restaurant, what's the best point of sale? What's the best email marketing? What's the best website? How do all those pieces fit together? In some cases, for that given restaurant, right? Everybody's gonna be different. If you're an Italian grinder shop versus fine dining or whatever. In some cases, maybe that's an all-in-one solution. Like Square has a lot of those things, a lot of those boxes checked on its own. But maybe it's Shopify point of sale now that so many people are accustomed to this, online ordering, and maybe that integrates with, maybe there's a Shopify plugin that you develop really deep expertise in, or that you build on your own, that really, sets you apart from other agencies. And I think, the businesses that I talk to, I'm part of a sort of a pilot group with our local economic development agency, Prosper Portland. A lot of these businesses that are even established, even the ones that have been around at a brick and mortar location for 4 or 5 years, they're now really starting to ask themselves these questions, like, what is my best point of sale system? Is the one I'm on really, like, is it really doing everything I need? Can I message out offers to customers that have come in and purchased related to what they've, bought from me previously? I think this has sort of made everybody really think twice as hard about what their existing setup is. And I think if you as an agency can come in and say, here are the ways that we can help you evaluate your existing product set, your existing marketing spend. I think that's, being a truly consultative partner of a business, as opposed to saying, here's my briefcase full of stuff, and here's what we sell to businesses like you. I think it really does need to be a little bit more sort of custom tailored to individual businesses.
I don't want to use this term, the term that so many people are coining, but I mean, it almost sounds a little cloud brokery, like you're going in and basically, here is the stack you need to run your unique business, and we'll help you configure that. Because buying the off-the-shelf, all in a box thing rarely fits any individual business very well.
In my experience, that's true. Like I said, there's some, in some cases, there are all-in-one solutions that fit specific businesses really well, but those are sort of few and far between. And I think that the old way of doing things, where you had a set of 4 products that you sold, and you attempted to, you kind of went serially in terms of what you are selling a business, I think that that's going to be increasingly difficult.
Every problem, you have a hammer, so every problem looks like a nail.
Right, exactly. Perfect. That's perfect. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, again, there's no differentiation there and not that much value, right? So increasingly, and again, the automation takes away what used to be necessary. But how much of that point is sort of generational? I mean, are there still businesses that need help with the things that they actually could do themselves?
Definitely, but I think you have to adjust your business model, right? So I'm just going to use local service ads as an example, LSAs from Google.
Mm-hmm.
Those require no creative. They don't even require a website. They don't require bid management. They don't require keyword research. Any of the traditional things that used to be essential to run a traditional AdWords campaign. Google has taken all of that and allowed the SMB to sort of move the dial up and down based on what kind of lead flow that they want to see. And I think you as an agency need to rethink, okay, well, my core value that I can add to this whole proposition is introducing the business to local search ads, local service ads, which I don't think most businesses still know about them. And then B, taking a hard look at the quality of leads that Google is sending, the characteristics of the leads that actually convert. How do you find more people that look like them on non-Google platforms? Those are the kinds of skills that I think, a business can't do on their own that I don't see Google really getting into. They're not going to try to encourage you to spend more money outside of Google, right? So I would say that's a much better fit rather than saying, okay, we resell AdWords and we take a 40% cut of whatever your budget is, and that's our management fee, right?
Right.
That's a lot simpler model, but Google is eating that 40% increasingly with this ad format, with product listing ads, basically every ad format that Google's coming out with, they are automating away a huge chunk of the former agency skill set.
Right. Now, a couple things keep coming up in these conversations I'm having. One is sort of, scale. How important is that for agencies? Because there's a lot of small agencies, but ultimately, is this going to have to be a scale business where you have, a platform you can scale up, and that kind of leads to fewer agencies controlling the pie, or is there still a place for like smaller niche? Or is that even an either or?
Yeah, if anything, I'm sort of more bullish on the smaller onesie twosie type agencies.
Why is that?
Because I think that they are much more able to provide the personalized consultative experience that I'm talking about. I think that becomes a lot harder when you have, when you're trying to scale to thousands of customers and you're dealing with a different account manager every month, and the account manager is probably trained in one sort of given silo, and increasingly I think that you're going to need a lot sort of broader range of expertise than just that given silo. You may have your agency today might be configured that you have one team that's responsible for all of your legal customers, and you have one team that's responsible for all of your contractors or what have you. And I think vertical specialization is still probably a good thing to think about, but I don't know that the sort of cookie cutter approach that sort of lends itself to is really going to fit this, what I think is a sort of newer model of identifying the existing software solutions that are good fits for a given customer. So
there's a better opportunity to run a 5-person, I hate to use the term lifestyle business, that's very dismissive, but perhaps more like that than to try to think about becoming.
I think so. I think increasingly, again, just to go back to our previous point, like Google and Facebook and LinkedIn and all of these big players are, if you as an agency can, figure out how to scale and automate, chances are pretty good that those companies are doing
it better
in-house. Exactly, and do a better job of it. So
yeah, fair point.
So really, your value to them is to bring them customers, and I'm not sure that that's a place that you really want to be unless your kickback from them is sustainable enough to pay your sales force. So.
Well, that's a different point if you have proprietary software and tools,
Right, which is, to my earlier sort of nuanced comment about a Shopify plugin, right? I mean, I think you might see these larger agencies actually moving more into the software space and using that software as a hook to bring in more customers and as something that is defensible IP.
I guess this kind of referring to your work at Thrive Hive, where product-led growth was the big mantra. Individual selling obviously will always be there for those little shops. That's how it's always going to be. But selling at scale, my view has always been that becomes increasingly less sales driven and more.
Right.
More, so talk about, it's a bit of a shift in topic, but talk about where you see that ultimately going.
Yeah, well, I've long been an advocate for what I think is a perfect moniker, product-led growth, where, you are, it's almost a reversal of the traditional sales funnel. You're actually inviting someone into the product and letting them try it out and learning from what they're doing and learning about the kinds of businesses that are, that you're attracting and using that to inform your, to further refine that sort of initial, what we called at Thrive Hive, a lead magnet. So I think that you're going to see, I think the successful scaled businesses will start to develop more and more of these, as opposed to, the same old cold calling or cold emailing or whatever the next the next messaging technology is.
Cold
Facebook.
Texting, cold
right, exactly.
Cold IMing, yeah,
exactly. Cold slacking, right? So so I think that businesses have already largely kind of turn that stuff off, and you're seeing especially the newer generation of business owners really trying to sort of research things themselves and at least educate themselves about what they're looking for and what the options are, as opposed to just taking a call from a sales guy or saleswoman and making a decision on the spot. I think that it's got to be something that is more again, that you're delivering some kind of initial value as opposed to just selling what your solution is. So, I think it's going to vary by industry. I think that I had a conversation the other day with a startup company that's working in the daycare space, and I think you really need to understand the pain point of your customers to know what that sort of lead magnet might be. So the pain point of someone who operates a daycare is going to be very different from a personal injury lawyer is going to be very different than a general contractor, right? So understanding kind of what that pain point is from your customer set and figuring out, okay, what's a piece of product that I can give away for free to attract these guys and sort of build in as a module into some kind of a sort of graduation process within the product that will bring them along to become a paying customer. I think there's always a role for sales. I'm very pro sales. I'm just anti cold sales. I think selling with some information about a business and what they're doing and what their pain point is makes everybody's life better, right? It makes the salesperson's job easier in selling. It makes the experience as the customer or prospect that much better because you actually feel like they're giving you more personalized advice. So I think that that's the sort of the newer model that I would encourage, regardless of the size of your agency, encourage folks to kind of move into.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that a lot of famous product-led companies have actually been adding a lot of sales headcount. I think Slack is one. I think Zoom is one.
Right.
But what's common among them all is that they're not adding, a boiler room sales staff.
Exactly.
They're adding either like key account level, or something, or enterprise, but it's all sort of post initial customer acquisition.
My guess is those are upgrade sales as opposed to
so they're almost 100%.
Right? Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. None of them, they're not, it's misinterpreted as a shift away from product-led growth. It's not at all.
Right.
What it is, we're looking for big spenders and getting them to, or potential big spenders and turning them into big spenders, which does take sales. Right?
I'm sure you've received several phone calls.
Yeah.
Given the number of Zooms and Slacks.
I do a lot of Zooms, but they would be misinterpreting my spending power based on my Zoom activity. But nonetheless, yeah. So that's definitely happening. But how does that, maybe I'm being dumb here, but how does that apply to a small, because does that approach apply equally to a small company as it does to a big one? I mean,
I
not
suppose
equally perhaps, but how do you apply it?
depends how small, right? I mean, I think you can, at least in the sort of my background in the SEO world, right? There's always been third-party tools out there that you as an agency or a consultant can leverage to deliver a free, analysis and say,
like website analysis tools. I mean, those are
right, exactly. And a lot of
you
those
can just plug those in and use those as outreach, right?
exactly. A lot of those are crap, but I think that, if you do a good job, of a lot of them are built to really overwhelm a business owner and scare them and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, here's the 10 reasons why your website is useless.
Right. And so I think if you as an agency add some value to those largely crap reports, in terms of, hey, this actually really is an issue. Your page speed on Google is, 25, and here's why that matters. Think about all of your customers who right now are looking on their phones for, takeout or whatever, and they can't even get your website to load. That's a problem, right? And so those kinds of using the third-party tools to deliver some kind of value prior to a real sales conversation, where you're talking about a pain point as opposed to, I have a thing that I'm selling you. That's kind of at a very, very micro level, something that really any company.
So applying the same principles, but for a small shop.
Yeah. Right. Your product isn't necessarily software. Your lead magnet isn't necessarily software, but it's something that sort of gets the conversation started with some degree, that some obvious evidence that you have personally looked at what this business is about.
Right. Even if it's with a crap tool, right?
Right.
How do you talk about email in the context of a world where there's so many different ways to, there's Slack, there's text, there's IM, all that.
Sure. I think, each channel has its place, right? And I don't know that I don't advocate for email over texting or vice versa, or search over social, or vice versa, depending on the context and depending on the company. One thing that I found pretty interesting, I think your colleague Neil Polachek tweeted this last week. Email open rates have actually gone up during this outbreak.
Not surprising at all.
Right, because people, people probably have a little bit more time on their hands at home. They can't, go out and do things on the weekends and that sort of thing. But B, there's probably, there's a little bit more desire to sort of feel connected and understand what's going on in your community and with the businesses that you've supported in the past. That I think it makes sense to me that consumers would want to, sort of feel a little bit more connection.
Maybe a hunger for more information. It's like, maybe I should pay attention to these newsletters I've been ignoring because maybe there's something in there I need to know now. Yeah, I know that's a guess, but they're just a more desire for not content. Content is like an empty bucket, but for knowledge or for insight and information.
Exactly. And I think that, I think it's a great time for small businesses to be getting into email right now, because so many large brands are failing miserably at it. How many, letters from a CEO about how
we're all in this together.
Right. Exactly. I mean, how many of those things do you really want to read? And so if you as a small business are sending out a really authentic newsletter, I got one from a former Prosper Portland client here in Portland who runs she's sort of a good example of a business that I think will do well in the future, a sort of hybrid e-commerce in-person retail operation. And she said, look, here's what's going on. We're still trying to support the merchants, and she imports a lot of goods from like Mexico and other places. And we're still trying to support all of those merchants. I'm about to have my first child. And so I'm going to be offline for a little bit, and we really value your support and those kinds of, that was just a really touching, great email that really solidified, that business in my mind as one that I wanted to support as a consumer. And it just stood out, so starkly, literally, it's like, I got her email, and then, TripAdvisor and Marriott Hotels and Alaska Air, and it's like all of the others were identical.
They all said we're in it together.
Right, exactly. Here's what we're doing. I mean, actually, in Alaska's defense, they said they're extending their sort of, frequent flyer eligibility from 2020 to 2021. So that's great. But
that's tangible. Yeah.
That's tangible, right? But I guess that's the thing, is that so many brands are being non-tangible and totally impersonal.
Well, to be intangible and inauthentic at the same time is
right.
pretty useless, right?
Right, exactly. So anyway, I think email is has been a very successful channel, really since its inception. And although social and some of these newer channels like Slack and those sorts of things have gotten more attention, email's sort of always been a high performer. And if anything, again, the data, at least that I've seen, you guys sharing, suggests that it's, it continues to even increase during this.
What about the future? And does this moment change its future in any way?
I don't think it I don't think it changes its future necessarily. I think that, you may actually get more people signing up for your newsletter right now, or your loyalty program, or whatever it is. So I think, don't abuse that, don't abuse that privilege, but I don't necessarily think, I don't see it changing dramatically. If Facebook and Instagram didn't kill email, I have a hard time believing that Slack or anything else will kill email. So.
Right. Okay. So this sort of was touching on kind of a primer for small business in this moment. And I think, again, I've done a little work on this, just did some interviews with some SMBs, like just as the lockdowns were kicking in, and it was sinking in that I'm going to have to shut my business down, and it might be for a while, and I have to figure the next move out. Yeah. And a couple of things came out of that. One is, you whatever pivot you have to make it quickly. It sure helps to have good relationships with your customers going into this, and to try to build them during this. But you got to do what you can. What are some of the things you think are going to help a business get through this?
Well, I think that, as I mentioned, a little earlier on, like even taking a baby step into e-commerce, I think, will make a big difference. If I don't have to pick up the phone and call you and understand, what's available on your menu, do you have curbside pickup, all of those kinds of questions. So being a little bit more outgoing with respect to your, with what can be done online with your business, I think is a good start. Offering gift cards, which honestly, as I mentioned that point of sale example earlier, that was this guy's biggest, the thing that caused him to question his existing point of sale system the most was he could not do a physical gift card that integrated with his point of sale. And so starting to ask yourself those questions are okay, what is essential today is still going to be something that is important in the future, and starting to figure out, ways that you can dip your toe into those kinds of things moving forward. Another thing is, I think that we've talked about authentic communication between the business and its customers. Business to business communication right now is probably important as well, like understanding from your vendors, from your neighboring businesses, what they're doing. Are there ways that you can support each other with, buying each other's excess inventory to, help out with, if one, I don't even know what it would be, if one urgent care clinic, right, is open and the restaurant next door is forced to close, are there ways that you can, barter or those kinds of things with each other? So I think, just things that help build a community, both with your end customers as well as your fellow business owners. Now is a good time to do that. And those things will pay dividends, continually, even after the outbreak is over.
We have this Modern Commerce Monitor research, which you're familiar with, I believe. And we track sort of how small businesses are adopting technology. And one of the things we've tracked is sort of generational differences between technology adoption. They're pretty stark, and it's not hard to reason. And then there's also this trend of so many people turning 65 every day, and so we're sort of predicting a flattening of the adoption curve, I guess, for technology. And this moment seems to be accelerating that. And very loaded question here, but do you see us coming out of this with a steeper curve for small businesses becoming more reliant on technology for everything, not just lead gen or whatever it is they were using it for before?
Right. I think you're probably going to see, we've talked about this already, but I think you're probably going to see businesses starting to ask, what are technology solutions to things that they maybe used to do offline previously, just because they've been forced into that now, right? So I think that will definitely accelerate, really, regardless of generation. I have a friend who's a psychologist who is like the most, she's not necessarily anti-technology, but she's pretty much a Luddite. She's in her 70s.
She's an analog person. That's a nice
yeah, exactly. She's an analog person. There you go. Right. She's an analog person, and she has totally shifted her entire psychology business to use Zoom. And she says that in many cases, patients actually like it better. They don't have the hassle of having to drive to her office, and find parking and all of that. And I think that, that's a good example of someone who is, she's actually in an industry that's, doing great, obviously, because we're all super anxious. Yeah. She's not about to retire, but she is like reinventing her business to use, really easy new technology platform that now consumers and she are, really familiar and comfortable with. So.
And she's an example of somebody you would not have expected that from.
I would have expected her to say, you know what, it is a good time to retire.
Yeah,
and she,
interesting.
She's doubling down. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess another way of putting what I asked is, will this sort of shake people? The people who can make the pivot will get through muddle through this, and
right.
The ones who just can't.
I think
won't.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of another way of putting that. Accelerating that
right
shift.
I think it probably is going to sort of acutely highlight your motivation as to whether this is a shift that you want to make, or no, it's time to hand this off to someone else. Right. But I don't necessarily see I think the generational thing is maybe a little bit overplayed, even though I do think that we're going to see an increase in technology adoption basically regardless of demographic. So yeah.
Okay, fair point.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you think actually that the small agencies are in a good place. A lot of people maybe see it differently, that you got to be big to survive. So you don't necessarily see a consolidating field, or do you see it consolidating at the top and then spreading at the bottom?
I guess I see the middle getting hollowed out. Yeah. So, and actually Mike Blumenthal and I did a graphic years ago that we should probably resurface, but essentially there's a lot that you can do for a business, at a very low spend, sort of high scale, price point. There's a lot that you can do for a business at a very custom high dollar price point, and there's a big valley in the middle. And so I think you're going to see the agencies who are in between kind of fall into that valley, and that's going to be really hard to sort of crawl out of unless you go in one of those two directions. So,
which is the scale argument probably for those companies, which is either you have to find a way to get big through acquisition or growth, or you're going to be in trouble because you're not going to want to get smaller, probably.
Right. Well, maybe, although you may have folks that do want more of a lifestyle business, and that's the
right. But that's when you leave a business and start your little agency.
Right.
You don't turn your mid-sized business into a small.
Yep.
More than likely, that would be the path.
Yep.
All right. Okay, man. Well, so good luck to you. Good luck with Tidings and whatever else you're going to work on next.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.